In 1823, Gregor MacGregor did something no one had ever attempted before. He sold an entire country. Bonds backed by its government, paying 6% interest. Land grants signed by its prince. Commissions in its army. He raised over £200,000, roughly £20 million in today's money. Hundreds of families bought tickets to start new lives there. Ships set sail with settlers, supplies, and dreams of prosperity. There was just one problem. The country didn't exist. This is the story of the Poyais fraud, one of the most brazen financial schemes in history, and the man who convinced an entire city that he ruled a nation he made up. Gregor MacGregor was born in Scotland in 1786. By his 20s, he had served in the British Army, fought in the Napoleonic Wars, and developed a taste for titles, uniforms, and attention. But Britain offered limited opportunities for a man of his ambition. So he sailed to South America, where revolutions were breaking out across the continent. Spain's colonial grip was collapsing, new republics were forming, and for men like MacGregor, there was fortune to be made. He fought alongside Simón Bolívar in Venezuela. He led troops in New Granada. And somewhere along the way, he started calling himself General, then Brigadier, then eventually Sir Gregor MacGregor, Knight of the Green Cross. The titles were half earned, half invented. No one was keeping track. By 1820, MacGregor had returned to London with a new story. He claimed that the King of the Mosquito Coast, a sparsely populated stretch of jungle along the eastern shore of Central America, had granted him a massive tract of land. Not just land, sovereignty. MacGregor said he was now the cazique, or prince, of a territory he called Poyais. And Poyais, according to MacGregor, was extraordinary. He published a guidebook. He commissioned maps. He described a capital city called St. Joseph, with wide boulevards, a cathedral, an opera house, and a thriving port. The soil was fertile. The climate was temperate. Gold and silver were abundant. The native population was friendly and eager to trade. Poyais, he said, was a land of opportunity, a new Scotland in the tropics. London in the 1820s was gripped by speculation. The wars with Napoleon were over. Capital was flowing. Investors were hungry for yield. Latin American bonds were the hottest asset class. New republics were issuing debt to fund their governments, and British investors were buying it up. MacGregor's timing was perfect. He didn't just sell land, he sold Poyaisian government bonds, paying 6% interest. He offered commissions in the Poyaisian army. He appointed a Poyaisian minister in London. He even designed a Poyaisian flag and had it flown outside his office. Everything looked official. Everything felt real. Investors lined up. Among them were merchants, clerks, and tradesmen, people of modest means looking for a better life. They bought land grants for £20, £50, £100. Some bought bonds. Others signed up to emigrate, paying for passage to this new world. In September 1822, the first ship left London for Poyais. On board were about 70 settlers. They brought tools, seeds, and supplies to start their new lives. They had been promised a functioning colony, infrastructure, and support from the local government. When they arrived, there was nothing. No city, no port, no roads, just jungle, swamp, and a few scattered huts. The settlers were stranded. They had no way to farm the land, no fresh water, no contact with the outside world. Disease spread quickly. Supplies ran out. Some tried to survive by trading with local indigenous groups. Others tried to sail away in makeshift boats. A second ship arrived a few months later with more settlers. They found the survivors in desperate condition. By the time a rescue ship finally reached them in 1823, more than half of the original settlers had perished. The rest were evacuated, sick and penniless. Back in London, the truth started to emerge. Newspapers began reporting the disaster. Survivors told their stories. But remarkably, MacGregor was not immediately arrested. He denied responsibility. He claimed he had been deceived by agents. He blamed the settlers for poor preparation. And because he had structured everything carefully, using contracts, official-looking documents, and intermediaries, it was hard to prove outright fraud. He even tried to do it again. In 1825, MacGregor moved to Paris and launched a new Poyais scheme, this time targeting French investors. He raised more money, sold more bonds, but French authorities were quicker to act. He was arrested and tried for fraud. Yet even then, the jury acquitted him. The legal definition of fraud was narrow. He had not technically stolen money. He had sold something that did not exist, which was harder to prosecute. MacGregor eventually returned to London, then moved to Venezuela, where he lived out his final years on a modest military pension granted by the government he had once served. He died in 1845. History moved on, but the Poyais fraud left a mark. It exposed the speculative fever of the 1820s, when investors were so eager for returns they didn't ask enough questions. It showed how a single man, with no capital and no country, could create an entire financial instrument out of nothing but paper and performance. And it revealed a painful truth, that the line between investment and belief is thinner than we think. The families who bought land in Poyais were not fools. They were people acting on the best information they had, in a world where new nations were being born and fortunes were being made. They trusted documents. They trusted titles. They trusted the system. MacGregor understood something fundamental, that money flows toward narrative. If the story is compelling enough, if the details are convincing enough, people will believe. And once they believe, they will invest. The lesson is not that investors were gullible. It's that verification is hard, especially when everyone around you is also buying in. When the bonds are trading, when the maps are printed, when the flag is flying. The fraud becomes real because the market treats it as real. This is the power of constructed belief, and it's why stories like Poyais still matter. Because markets are not just numbers, they are systems of trust. And trust, once broken, is expensive to rebuild. The settlers who returned from the jungle lost more than money. They lost years. They lost family members. They lost faith in a system that had promised them a future. MacGregor, meanwhile, walked away. Not unscathed, his reputation was ruined, but alive, free, and never fully held accountable. That's the other lesson. Fraud does not always end in justice. Sometimes it ends in ambiguity, in legal grey zones, in outcomes that feel incomplete. But history remembers, and the pattern repeats. Different names, different countries, different assets, but the same core truth. When speculation outruns scrutiny, when belief replaces evidence, the cost is borne by those who can least afford it. Stories like this one do not end here. They echo forward. They show up in new forms, in new markets, in new manias. Subscribe to the Panic Index. 3 to 4 new videos every week, all waiting for you. Because the more we understand the past, the better we can see the pattern before it repeats.